4 years. It only took 4 years for Radiohead to go from Pablo Honey to OK Computer. And yet, if you told me back then that the band behind Creep would also make songs like Paranoid Android or Subterranean Homesick Alien, I wouldn't have believed you. Even The Bends, which was already a big step up from the debut, couldn't fully foreshadow the monumental event that was to follow. And before we go any further, don't worry Pablo Honey fans, I'm not here to dunk on that album whatsoever. If anything, it's an extremely solid debut, and a nice time capsule of 90s rock music. In this case, it's just death by comparison. I didn't grow up during that time, but I have a feeling Radiohead weren't expected to become, well, the absolute beast they became. To this day, many fans and publications will tell you that OK Computer was the band's pinnacle, and even one of the best albums ever made. And I certainly see where they're coming from. The way the group elevated their alt-rock sound to such artistic heights was completely stunning, and I still get chills when I think of how much of 21st century life they predicted with the album's lyrics. Listen to Fitter Happier for more context on that.
Fitter, happier, more productive, comfortable, not drinking too much, regular exercise at the gym.
But oh boy, if an album like OK Computer gave people whiplash back then, I can only imagine their reactions to what came next. After the band mastered 90s rock music with OK Computer, frontman Tom York very explicitly stated his desire to depart from rock music altogether. He started listening to artists on the Warp label, such as Autechre and Aphex Twin. Explaining to Q Magazine, it was refreshing because the music was all structures and had no human voices on it. I felt just as emotional about it as I'd ever felt about guitar music. Electronic music would start becoming more prominent in the group's sound, a direction they're still pursuing to this day. The album that started the shift? Kid A. While Kid A is often considered one of Radiohead's greatest achievements today, that was not the narrative surrounding the album when it was first released. Fans were baffled, reviews were mixed, and the people criticizing the band would often use words like deliberately obscure or pretentious. But frankly, I see Kid A as an extremely logical follow-up to OK Computer. Just listen to that opening track, Everything in Its Right Place. After the tension and anxiety clouding OK Computer, the beginning of Kid A immediately plunges us into a more sparse, barren soundscape. If OK Computer represents a cautious, distressing vision of the future, Kid A represents the desolate, bleak aftermath of that vision. And what a time for it to be released, too. Kid A came out in 2000, Y2K itself, the same year in which the world was supposed to descend into complete chaos. Computer programming mass failures, the collapse of worldwide infrastructures, all that crazy shit. And while the world obviously didn't end, I have to imagine that Kid A mirrored a lot of the uneasiness and fear that the event caused in the general public. In fact, listening to the album is almost like stepping into an alternate reality, in which Y2K actually did ravage the Earth and leave it in a more dire state. Now, am I pushing the post-apocalyptic narrative a bit too much? Perhaps. But I think it goes a long way in describing how effective the album's atmosphere is. This is not to say that the apprehensive, nervous energy of OK Computer has been completely abandoned here. For instance, take a listen to the jazz rock Freak Out, the national anthem. The bass line is steady as a rock, providing a constant anchor for all the chaos that's gradually building overhead. By the time the song is over, you'll feel enveloped, even suffocated by the wailing horns and walls of noise. For a less striking example of these more off-kilter moments, there's In Limbo. The rhythms of this track sound almost formless, as though Phil Selway's drums are stumbling into each other at every turn. Combine this with York's mellow warbling, and the song becomes a weird synthesis of dreamlike and urgent. But those soft, contemplative moments? Damn, are they beautiful. It doesn't surprise me that the band were heavily influenced by Björk around this time. Kid A utilizes the same approach of immersing its listeners into a living, breathing, fully fleshed out world of its own. This is the type of record that rewards repeated listens, as each playthrough reveals something new that you likely missed the first time around. A perfect representation of this is the ambient instrumental Tree Fingers. Through the manipulation of several guitar loops, Ed O'Brien weaves a complex sonic tapestry. Even in such a spacious, moody piece like this, the music is still so dense and multifaceted. The same goes for the title track and How to Disappear Completely, both of which ebb and flow in a more cinematic, post-rockish fashion. Special props to the latter for including those haunting orchestral touches, not to mention Colin Greenwood's melancholic yet unwavering bass line that anchors the whole song. Speaking of Greenwood, check out the subtle bass work underpinning the album's most rock-oriented cut, Optimistic. Even as the song itself reaches a moment of release, the uneasy bass line ensures that not all of its tension and unrest have completely vanished. Gotta love little touches like that. But what I think might truly be the biggest breakthrough of Kid A is the ingenuity of the band members themselves. Since Radiohead were cutting back on most of their guitar elements, they had to think outside the box and find ways to fill that void. And while I've already mentioned one of O'Brien's workarounds with Tree Fingers, I think Johnny Greenwood's contributions to Idiotech are even more noteworthy. Yeah, you hear that propulsive beat that courses through the entire song? That was created by Greenwood. Or, at least, he created the original improvisation before York cut it up into the beat we hear now. Greenwood was also the one behind the main synth line, which he sampled from an old 70s computer music piece by composer Paul Lansky. And man, the dreary feel of that motif is such a perfect contrast against the frantic, thumping beat behind it. The record ends with a sigh of relief, in the form of Motion Picture Soundtrack, a gorgeous tune that unravels all the tension caused by its immediate predecessors, Idiotech and Morning Bell. Packed with enough synth layers to fill a cathedral and a truly stunning closing performance from York, this is the album's true moment of release and catharsis. And thus ends what I consider to be Radiohead's masterpiece. Now, obviously, the band would have plenty of success with future records, including two of my personal favorite albums of theirs, In Rainbows and the vastly underrated The King of Limbs. But I simply don't think that they ever combined their electronic and rock-based sensibilities more effectively than they did on Kid A, and I don't think the atmosphere was ever more potent than it was here either. Radiohead invited listeners to step into a haunting vision of the 21st century as it was just getting started, and much like with OK Computer, they would correctly predict much of the vibe to follow. Welcome to this brave new world we call the 2000s. Hope you're ready to take it on. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you've got an artist or band you want me to cover in the future, please let me know. I'm open to suggestions. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'm well on my way to 1,000 subs and would appreciate the support. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.